How to stay on task. I think one of my biggest weaknesses while in school was going off topic. Whenever I did a writing exam and I would think that I did really good, right? I'll be like, oh my God, I nailed everything down. I nailed the characters, I nailed the dialogue, I nailed the story down, right? I get back my piece of paper and it'd just be covered in OT, OT, OT everywhere. You don't know what OT is, it means off topic. And of course, I would always wonder to myself, why did this happen? Where did it all go wrong? Why do I get OT? And this would not only affect my English writing grades as well, but it also affected my argumentative essays because I would also get OT. I was thinking to myself, what would cause this? A lot of people told me or gave me some advice telling me, just plan, just do your mind map, do one of those bullet points map. I'm not sure what they're called. It's basically you write down like bullet points for each paragraph or topic that you want to talk about. I would do them. Wouldn't work. I would still be stuck at square one. I'll still get OT. So I was wondering to myself, what would cause this? I mean, there has to be a reason that causes this. Of course, I did some digging and I did some experimentation myself, and I've noticed that it's caused by a multitude of factors, not only one. All right. So let's first talk about what causes off-topic writing. It mostly people would say it's focus, right? Because, well, off topic means you went out of the path, you deviated away, which means that you were not focused enough. This is true to some extent, but I was focused. I could assure you I was. How can I know? 1 minute, I would think that 1 minute has passed, but in reality, an hour has passed. I think you guys have experienced this, especially in the exam halls. If they have air conditioning, it's very easy to just stay focused, and then suddenly time will fly by, which is why people would use a watch when they're doing exams. So if it's not only focus, then well, surely there must be a reason, right? As I mentioned earlier, there's a multitude of reasons, but this tends to be what most people come to the conclusion is well, focus. But in reality, it's more than that. Firstly, misunderstanding. All right. When we ask me what do you mean by misunderstanding, let me give you some background context. So have you ever watched like the same movie with some of your friends? Maybe some guys have watched Oppenheimer or Barbie movie, those movies. I have not watched it yet. But one thing I noticed is that when you watch a movie with your friends, the end conclusion, right, when you guys think of what do you think of the movie, it would tend to be different. It will not be the same. Unless if you're twins, well then I suggest you find a scientist because they could really need to know more about how the human brain works. But besides that, your opinions tend to be different. You don't really have the same opinion as other people. In fact, you've seen this probably in anime as well. Some people think, aha, very funny. It's just some guy, fighting demons, very cool. But some people could look at it and say, well, that just shows you this shows the power of family, right? If you know the anime, you know the anime. As you can see, there's always some different opinions from different people. Although the show itself is the same, right? It's the same to both people, right? The show itself is the same, but their opinion, their lenses, they have their own opinions. This also applies to writing too. You could write a paragraph, right? You could write a paragraph and you would interpret it differently. Some people would interpret it differently. Some people may see it as just some funny comedic paragraph, but some people may see it as something that's very important that they must reflect upon. Again, this applies to writing. So when you're doing your writing exams, right, they tend to give you a topic, right? There's always some topic. And you would interpret it differently compared to how other people would interpret it, right? You would write something different from other people. Unless you're plagiarizing, then, well, that's your problem, really. But I think you gotta understand it that since off topic is subjective, it blatantly is subjective. You need to think from the marker's point of view, but you cannot think fully from it. Why? Because if you think fully in the marker's point of view, you're gonna get deductive marks. Where in creativity, you're not creative enough. That's why you got to create, that human touch, that touch that can only be accomplished when you yourself give a shit about your writing. So, how would you, tackle this? Well, it's pretty simple. You got to think from both perspectives, but how? You gotta think what the marker wants and what you want to do, right? For example, the marker may want you to be analytical, right? You want humor. You can combine the two. You can. It's not only been done in like writing exams, but it's also been done in real life. Mark Manson, he does that. He tends to be very factual, but he's also adds a lot of humor to his books. It's pretty funny. So of course you got to combine the two, right? That's how it works. Of course, I did try this out, and yeah, I did get some OT deducted. Eventually, I had it so that my first half of my writing would not get OT, but the other half would. Let me explain why later. Secondly, wrong lens. What do I mean by wrong lens? Well, for example, I'm using a camera here, and on this camera I have a, what is that mm? 0.25 mm. Oh, okay, whatever. Basically, it's the kit lens. So I have the kit lens. Although I have another lens, I do. I have a 50 mm lens, but I'm not using it here. Why? Because, well, this lens is, well, ultra wide, and I need to have a wide angle shot. That's how it works, because I'm not going to sit very far away from my camera, I'm going to sit near it, right? Just like when you take group photos, you're going to use the ultra wide lens, you're not going to use the regular lens at all. Same thing applies to, well, writing, right? I have different styles, different techniques, and different, you know, lenses for different jobs, right? Just like in games, you have different weapons for different fights. It's the same thing going on here. So, as I mentioned earlier, that in the beginning I would not get OT, but in the other half I would get lots of OT. And well, I started to wonder what caused it. Well, I noticed I was starting to deviate away from the path. So I thought to myself, how could I resolve this? What can I do? And decided to rob this technique. I plagiarized this technique from mindfulness. Now, in mindfulness, the main point of it is that you want to be in the present moment. You ask yourself what's going on right now. Should I care about what's going on right now? Stuff like that. I was wondering if you could apply this in writing. Well, you surely could, because it worked for me. And that is, when you're writing, you're writing down words, you're writing down sentences, you're writing down paragraphs. You have to always ask yourself, how does this relate back to the topic? How does it? If it doesn't relate, well, you have two options. You could either delete it, which would be a waste of time, or you could try, making up some stuff. You can just make stuff up to make it related. Okay, keep in mind, this is a writing. You can make stuff up all the time. Unless you're doing any argumentative essays, majority of the time the marker ain't gonna do fact checking. Neither will I. Like if I read an article and I'm not gonna do fact checking either. I'll just assume what you said is true. Of course, if it's very absurd, I would doubt it. But majority of the time, I don't really check everything. Same thing applies to writing. Try to think, how does this relate back to the original writing when you're writing down? Of course, doing this, well, it decreased my OT like a lot. I could, well, confirm this. Thirdly, environment. What do I mean by environment? Well, what did you do before? Right? Did you sleep well? Did you eat? One thing I noticed from writing stories, because I have to write, because I'm doing a writing course right now, because I want to be able to get better at writing myself so I can create better videos. I noticed that when I have to do these daily writing tasks or daily writing assignments, I tend to do the best in the morning. Although I'm not a morning person, which is quite interesting. I prefer waking up in the afternoon, but for work, apparently, it's the morning is the best. Somehow the sunlight, is that effective. Luckily for you, the exams are in the morning. Of course, I used to hate this fact because I did not want to wake up at 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock. I wanted to wake up at 10, 11, 12, the best hours of the day. But of course, since it's in the morning, you can write at your peak, but you got to maximize it. And there are ways. Fasting tends to be the most popular one. Of course, for example, this video that I'm recording right now, I have not ate breakfast right now. I haven't. I've not eaten breakfast. I just woke up, drank coffee, and started recording. There you go. Of course, by the time I'm done recording this, I'm gonna go eat lunch. So, well, there you go. Of course, as I mentioned before in previous videos, I suggest that you put 2 pinches of salt or sea salt in your water because it will fuel your neurons and help you perform better. In fact, I did this. Not only did I drink coffee, I took creatine, omega-3, and salt water. There you go. So if it works for this, it will work for writing. I can assure you that. In fact, during my exam period, I would take I would follow the steps actually, but I would also take blueberries and dark chocolate, which two of them improve brain cognition. So yeah, there you go. So remember, environment. Environment's pretty important because you are going to be the one writing it. Your body is the one that's going to be helping you. Your mind's going to be the one helping you. You better take care of those two. Take care of your tools in the arsenal so you can perform better, right? So you don't get OT. Because the majority of the time, OT really is just caused by a lack of sleep if you think about it. Because, well, you just want to get it over and done with and just go home and sleep, really. So, of course, having a lack of sleep would, of course, affect that. But also, not being interested in the exam. It's also one thing I've noticed, too. Of course, this is slightly of a side tangent, but one thing I would find that I would do better on exams is that if I chose an interesting topic, if I choose a topic that I found funny, I tend to do better in it because, well, I tend to have fun, right? Of course, having fun in the exam is quite weird and is an absurd thing, well, most people. But when you have fun, the exam is, I think, it's worth because, well, applying knowledge when you're having fun is way better. Honestly speaking, you will perform better. It's scientifically backed that if you're happy, you would do better. Same thing. If you choose an interesting topic that resonates, I was saying, if you choose a topic that resonates with you, you will to have a better time writing. Writing will be way more interesting, way more fun. So choose a topic that you would have fun in. Of course, this is a side tangent, it's not really related to OT, but it can help you a lot, and it's helped me a lot, quite a lot, because after the exams, I would think to myself, how fun was that exam? If it was not that fun, I would, say that was a bad exam because I did not have fun. I found it boring. So yeah, this is a side tangent, but I think this could also help you out as well. Lastly, bad preparation. Just like in this video, I've only done some prep work, like I've written a script, but I have not. For some reason, there's a lot of dust in this room, so I keep sneezing. So there you go. That's another example of bad prep. So it's becoming a nightmare for me to record this video, even though I want to record it. Of course, I'll cut out the part where I sneeze. You don't need to know. You don't need to see that. Anyway, sometimes it's really fun to go to the exam blind. There's some people out there like, oh, screw it, YOLO. Let's YOLO the exam, which is pretty fun. Sometimes it's fun going to games that are blind. Going to games that are blind is really fun. Going to movies that are blind, that you're blind, is fun. You know what you're getting into, and it's pretty fun. But of course, unfortunately, the goal of the exam is to get high scores, which is kind of cringe, honestly. But of course, you might be asking me, this is about off topic. How is it related? Well, it's related to a lot. Keep in mind, you're writing to a specific audience. You may not know it, but you're writing to a specific audience. Whenever you're writing down something, you have to always think about who are you talking to. Just like this video, who am I talking to? I'm talking to other people with the same mind as me. There you go. That's the audience I'm looking for. That's why you don't really see me editing these videos that much. I tend to just be like, hey, whatever, just trim it. Put some music. Yeah, cool, boom, let's go. But when you're writing, for exams or for articles or for blog posts, you have to write to a specific audience. Now, if you're doing a blog post or you're doing an article online, you can write about whatever you want, really. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter who you write to. It's up to you. You could choose whatever you want to write about. You'll be fine. But of course, for markers, they're, middle-aged men. You got to write to them. You got to speak to them, basically. Now, as I mentioned earlier, off-topic is really subjective. It's not really objective. Some people would argue that it's objective, to which my response would be, well, technically, where is the line? There isn't really no line. It's quite blurry. Therefore, I would just say that off-topic is, blatantly speaking, subjective because you can always find a way to relate it back to the main point. So, of course, you have to do some, preparation. What preparation? Now, a lot of people, what they would do is that they would go online, they'll go to the internet, search for word banks, those ones, and memorize a bunch of vocabularies. That works, but I would say that it's not really a good idea, really, because you're not going to add your own human touch to it. You got to add a human touch to it. And one thing I got to specify is that if you use complex words, you will have a harder time. Seriously. For example, if I were to use very complex words in this video, well, maybe some of you would understand what I'm saying, but some of you wouldn't. But if I use simple words, more people will understand, which means I am able to talk to more people. Way better, honestly speaking. So you could use complex words, but you got to understand your idea, your main concept must be simple. Okay? You could try to use complex words, but you have to hold the hands of the reader. You gotta, guide them. You gotta be the tour guide. Show them that this concept is simple and easy to understand. So as long as the underlying message is easy, you can use complex words. But again, I would stress this a lot. Only use complex words when they're absolutely necessary. If they're not necessary, don't use them because you're gonna get yourself in a whole lot of trouble. Okay, you can take my advice on this, really. Because I remember I have done this for some exams where I memorized a bunch of words, these complicated words, and try to look cool. I used the word superb, very cool. I also used Jollibee, which also means happy, from what I remember. Whatever. My whole life is on autocorrect. I just write, and autocorrect would fix it. It's amazing, 10 out of 10. But regardless, you don't have autocorrect in the exam. You don't have Microsoft Editor in the exam. You don't have Microsoft Word in the exam. Try to use simple words. Seriously. Try to use them. Because if you use simple words and if you have a good message, what's a good message? Well, that's for you to decide. So if you have a message, you use simple words, it'll be easier to understand so you will not get off topic. Seriously. And I gotta stress this enough. Please, don't fall into this dumb pitfall, of thinking that, oh, if I use complex words, I'll get higher marks. No, don't do that. Please, don't. Now, of course, after you write, you might be asking me, how can I tell my message is, well, easy to understand? There has to be a way. Yes, there is. As I mentioned earlier, use simple words, like I mentioned. But one more is proofreading your work. Now, most people think of proofreading as you read for grammatical errors, like did you make a grammatical mistake, did you make a spelling mistake here and there? Yes, that is proofreading, but you could do better than that. There is another version of proofreading you can do. This is something I made up right now. It's something I do. And that is look for errors in the way that you explain the story or how you illustrate it, right? Make your writing go in a smooth line, not jagged, smooth, and all over the place. Now you'll be asking me, how can you do this? How can you make sure that your writing is smooth? Well, you got to think from another perspective. You got to think that you're someone that's not really knowledgeable about the topic, right? Imagine you're like some dumb person, you don't understand the topic, and you're trying to explain or you're trying to teach it to them. How would you do it, right? Or you could or you can jump right into their mindset. You could read the article and pretend as if you don't know the background information, like you've not read up anything about it. You're just reading it blind. You could pretend this, and you could see if it's easy for them to understand. You try to become like them. Of course, it'll be hard, but with enough practice, it will actually be really effective as a tool. In fact, you could probably do it to a certain degree already right now. I mean, most of you probably could. I mean, come on. If you're in high school, you could probably look at other people's perspective. It is kind of a thing that you should have to do. You can't do it, you can train it, and it's gonna be really helpful, like, later works in life, in university, stuff like that. But regardless, as I digress, proofread your work from the perspective of someone that's not as knowledgeable in the topic as you. All right? As you can see, the four fundamental issues of, off-topic writing is, well, misunderstanding, right? Wrong lens, environment, bad prep. Okay, if you don't screw up in any four of these ways, you don't, mess up in these four domains, you will be fine. You would probably do really good in your exam. This is just some advice that I have because, honestly speaking, I have been struggling through this, and I wish someone would just, tell me how to overcome this. Because, honestly speaking, off topic is the bane of my existence, and it's quite embarrassing when I get back my paper and realize I get a bad score because I am a fluent English speaker. English is unfortunately my first language, so I should be able to do really good in this, right? There you go. So yeah, and as always, I'm reading your work from afar, and I'm rooting for you. Peace.